Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We're going to get started here in just 1 second. How's everybody doing tonight? It's a Wednesday. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. You heard the intro there. Jose Ramirez last night. Wow. Wow. I was watching that last night live and came out of my seat. Just a fantastic moment that will really go down probably in Cleveland Indians history. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But watching the game right now, and the Indians are tied up 1-1 with the Chicago White Sox. Shane Bieber is pitching, and he just gave up a run in the top of the fourth inning. They're in the fifth right now, and right now the White Sox have got a runner on third. So they got two outs, so hopefully he'll get through this inning. But wanted to come to you a little early, and again, if you're listening to the podcast via the audio, you heard the Tom Hamilton call of last night's three-run dramatic home run by Jose Ramirez. And as they came back and won that game in extra innings, 5-3, just a tremendous way to end that game. And so very exciting for the Indians. It locks them up into a playoff spot. Right now, I think they were number 7 going in, and they could potentially play the White Sox again in the playoffs. But, considering everything's gone on and, the ups and downs, I mean, the Indians pitching has been pretty solid all year long. Jose Ramirez has just really carried the team recently. He's had 6 home runs over the last 6 days. I think he's 14 for 28. I read that earlier today over that same stretch. Just having a great time right now. But thanks again for joining us on the podcast. Thank you. If you're watching on the podcast, thank you. If you're watching us from Facebook or on our YouTube channel, the Johnny Cleveland Podcast YouTube channel, you can reach us at the J Cleveland Pod on Facebook and on Twitter, and our Gmail. I'll put that up here. If you're watching the stream, you can email the show at the jclevelandpod@gmail.com. And so just glad to have you aboard. We've really enjoyed doing these podcasts over the last several months. And right now we're in the midst of the Indians are now going to the playoffs. We're going to talk a little bit about Cleveland, Washington football team. They've got their game coming up this weekend. Last podcast, we talked about the 5 Cleveland Browns legends that have had their numbers retired by the Brownies. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to consider what would be the next 5 players that you and I would like to see have their numbers retired. So we're going to discuss that as well. So the other thing, just before we get going here, I played that intro song. If you were listening to the audio of the old Commodores, was listening to the radio yesterday, and from 1981, "Lady," that was the name of the song that came out with the old Lionel Richie, and I hadn't heard that song forever. And I thought it would be kind of fun to bring that back. And so that's what you heard on the intro. And then you heard Jose Ramirez's 3-run homer in dramatic fashion. So anyway, good times. Indians are playing decently right now. Obviously, that was a huge win. Where do we put that in the the historic parts of the Indians going way back? Some folks were putting it like in the top 5 of most dramatic moments. I'm not sure if I'd go that far. It's been a very interesting season. There's no fans in the stands. Obviously, it brought a lot of attention to a lot of folks. But think back a couple of years ago in 2016 with Rajay Davis in Game 7 of the World Series. Obviously, the Indians lost that, so I don't find that moment to be historical as much. It was a great, exciting moment, but then the Indians end up losing the game anyway. And then my favorite moment when I think back about Cleveland Indians memories, obviously there's so many memories with people like the great Jim Thome, But how about Tony Pena? As I'd mentioned this before, back in 1995, Tony Pena hit the game-winning extra inning home run when the Indians was the first time that they went back into the playoffs. Tough game, first game. You weren't quite sure who was going to win that, and it kind of really propelled the Indians going forward in that postseason in '95. Back in '97, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. The Indians were playing the Seattle Mariners when the Mariners had that big 14-3 lead, and the Indians came back and won it on a Sunday night game on ESPN. I still remember that's really one of my favorite memories with the Carlos Baerga and Kenny Lofton and Albert Bell, all those great players back in the mid '90s that played for the Indians. But this home run by Jose Ramirez, I mean, you can't say enough about Jose. Just solid, just very. He's just been hitting the ball really well. Last night it was a 2-2 count, 2 outs. He fouled off the pitch prior to hitting the home run. It was a changeup, and he was able to make a connection on that. So the pitcher, and I don't have his name right now, but Jose was just really on top of it. Man, when he hit it, weren't we all excited? So it's great to see that. It does look like the Indians did get out of the little mess. They had runners on first and third, but Bieber got out of it. I think he has 8 or 9 strikeouts already too. So that's pretty impressive. He has just been outstanding. You could definitely make a case that Shane Bieber and Jose Ramirez should get the top awards this season. I mean, Shane Bieber, Cy Young. Jose Ramirez, I mean, MVP, especially if this propels the Indians forward into the now we're going in the playoffs, maybe the World Series. You never know. So very exciting to see that. I just don't know if I put it in that top 5, but I will not forget that home run for a long time. Wanted to before we move on to talk about the Brownies. Gale Sayers, the great Chicago Bear, did pass away in the last couple of days, and they used to call him the Kansas Comet. He went to the University of Kansas and was an All-American there. He was a great running back in the NFL, had some of his best seasons in the mid to late 60s. He led the league 5 seasons out of the 7. He only played for 7 years. He had bad knees. By the way, I have a bad knee too. I went to the doctor. I'll get back to Gale Sayers, but we'll talk about my knee later. So anyhow, Gale Sayers, he died. He was 77, but he's a NFL Hall of Famer. Just a brilliant career, short career. He's really known. The movie that came out, Brian's Song, about a teammate of his. I think it was Brian Piccolio. And Billy D. Williams, the actor, played Gale Sayers in this movie that came out I think it was the late 70s. But it talked about his teammate, Brian, who was ill and then died from that when they were younger. But, Gale Sayers was just a great, great human being, great football player. Like I said, he led the league in rushing, ended up with 5,000 yards, 39 touchdowns over his brief career, but he was just dynamite. People have described it as poetry in motion when he would run the football. You compare that to somebody like Nick Chubb. I don't know if it's poetry in motion when I see Nick Chubb run. Speaking of Nick Chubb, it was funny. I was watching a little blip. They had Kareem Hunt, the other running back for the Indians, and he was mic'd up during the game against Cincinnati, and Austin Hooper came by, and Austin says to Kareem, he says, "Man, does Nick ever smile? Like, is he ever happy?" And very interesting because Nick Chubb is all business, and he goes to work, and you can just see it. He likes getting hit. He likes that contact. Yards after he gets initially hit are just tremendous. I think people by the end of this season will definitely know that Nick Chubb is a top 5 running back. I mean, I agree that there are other really good running backs out there, but Zeke Elliott comes to mind in Dallas, but I would take Nick Chubb over Zeke any day of the week. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt together are just a great tandem. Can't wait to see what they continue to do this season. Obviously, it was a great start for them in this last game, but just a 1-2 punch that very exciting. So, um, just a real snippet about COVID. I mentioned that to talk a little bit, but our numbers here in Ohio continue to do very well. Are getting better all the time. Actually, that stat that I shared with you the last time, this when I looked earlier today, we're a third. Ohio is this now as having the best rate, 0.86 of COVID spread, which means that it's the spreading of COVID is not as predominant as it has been over the last several months. Because of that, our cases are going down. We're having 36,000 tests a day, and we're only getting anywhere between 600 and 900 cases out of that, and that leads to about 2 or 3%. So that's a very good percentage when we start talking about how that's in our society. So good job to our state. I think anytime I'm out and about, and you probably are too. I mean, most people that I see are really going through with the mandate, wearing masks, keeping their social distance. I think it's become a more regular consistent thing for most people who are trying to be good citizens and do that. So I would encourage you to continue to do that to help decrease the spread of COVID as we move forward. But all right, so the Browns play the Washington football team, not the Washington Redskins, but the Washington football team now. And some people have described the Washington football team as the Washington Buckeyes because you've got players like Chase Young and their quarterback now, Dwayne Haskins. So we're going to be playing them on Sunday. Looking forward to see how that shapes up. We've played the Redskins 5 times since 1999. And in that span, we've only won 1 game against Washington. The last time we played them was back in 2016 on October 2nd, and our quarterback at that time for the Brownies was Cody Kessler. Cody Kessler. And Washington, at that time, the Redskins had Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. Jordan Reed in that game, if you recall, caught 2 touchdown passes early on. The Browns were playing an uphill battle, but they actually came back and tied the game in that game in 2016 at halftime. That was the same game. If you remember this moment, you should go back and look at it. Go Google it. It really is still a head scratcher because late in that game, the Browns were down. I think it was 24-20 or 24-21, and they were driving. They were at about the 50 or 40-yard line, and Duke Johnson, Browns had Duke Johnson back then. He got the ball, ran it to his left, got into the pile, fell. While he was falling, he fumbled the ball. So immediately, everyone's like frantically looking for the ball, and the referees gave the ball to Washington, even though you can see it as plain as day on the replay that Duke Johnson is holding the ball in the air, standing up next to the referee. It blows my mind that call was never overturned. It changed the whole complexion of that game. The Browns really played a pretty decent game. Unfortunately, that year they did go 1-15. But again, it was early in the season that they were 0-3 coming into that game. They really, as I recall watching that game too live, they should have won the game. So the fact that they had this mystery fumble back then, it was. But I would encourage you to go back and look at that. It's from October 2nd of 2016. It's when Duke Johnson, he fumbled the ball, and for some weird reason, the refs maybe they got offered a good deal while they were trying to undo the shuffle there. They gave the ball to Washington, and then from there the Browns lost. But prior to that, back in 2004, the Brownies played the Redskins, and the last time they won was in 2004, October 3rd. Our quarterback then was Jeff Garcia, and the Brownies won that game 17-13. The running back for the Browns that year was Lee Suggs. You guys remember Lee Suggs? All right, so there's some history there with the Washington football team. Ron Rivera now is the coach of Washington. Dwayne Haskins is the quarterback. Dwayne Haskins has not been doing so hot. He doesn't have a good offensive line. He's been sacked several times. He's only averaging 6.3 yards a throw, which is 30th or 31st in the league right now, which is not very good. He just seems like we've talked about Baker Mayfield in the past. He's not real. Doesn't seem real confident. He doesn't seem to know where to go with the ball. Dwayne Haskins has never really. He had that 1 year in Ohio State where he was the quarterback and did some amazing things, but it was in college. And right now, I don't know if the game's just too fast for him right now, or he's just not seeing things. But that could be a real helpful thing for the Browns defense. I can see Myles Garrett right now just getting in there on Sunday against Dwayne Haskins and that weak front line for them. Now, what Washington does have is that they have a good defense. And they've registered several sacks on the defensive end. They've had several turnovers, and they've had already 6 turnovers, 3 picks, and 3 fumble recoveries. So they did beat Philadelphia Eagles. They were down in both games, like 17-0 and 20-0. The other this last week, I'm trying to think who they played. I know they played Philly. Oh, then they went out and played Arizona. So they were down on both occasions. In Philadelphia, they were able to come back. They relied on Dwayne Haskins and getting them back, and Dwayne did get them back, and they won that. But Philadelphia is a mess, too, so keep that in mind. Then they went out and played Arizona, and they got down 20-0 in that game, and they just were never able to bounce back. So we'll see where it goes. I think, I was looking and reading some of the Washington media outlets. They look at this game as they think that the Browns and our fan base might be too excited about what happened last week, and they think that Washington's defense will rise up and play well. And it is one of those games again where the Browns have this up and down. We'll see where they go. It'll be an important test. If Baker Mayfield doesn't feel going into the game that he has to make every throw and make the team, go down the field. He's got so many weapons. He needs to utilize those running backs. And I think Kevin Stefanski is a smart, conservative, and yet very structured coach. And I think that all that really benefits what the Browns are going to do offensively. Defense is really a kind of a worrisome thing in this last week, but Washington's offense is really yucky. I mean, they don't have a lot right now. So we'll talk more about the game on Friday, and I'll give you my prediction. So far, I was 2-4 with all my predictions from the first week. Last week, I was 6-0. So I've improved my record now to what would that be? 8-4 now. So I'll give you my predictions on the NFL games that we'll pick with the Browns and some of the other games coming up on Friday favorites. All right, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the Browns, a little bit more about the history. I mentioned a little bit in the last episode that there have been 5 numbers that have been retired in Browns history, and that would be Otto Graham, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Don Fleming, and Lou Groza. And I kind of went through their stories in the last episode. So I was thinking today, well, who would be the next 5? I've had this conversation with a few other of my friends and family, and get their take. So this is where these are my 5. There's probably a good 10 right now that I would put out there. But all right, so let's start with these 2 players for many different reasons. These 2 kind of are together, in my opinion, Marion Motley and Bill Willis. Now, the reason I bring these 2 guys up, Marion Motley was just an outstanding running back. He actually primarily wore number 76, was his number as a runner, but ended up using the number 36 because Lou Groza's number was also 76. So when they retired Lou Groza's number, Marion Motley had to then get another number, so he got 36. The reason I bring these guys up is because there's a lot of history, especially They were two African American players that really helped kind of break the color barrier back in 1946 with in professional football. Up until that point, there had been a break in the NFL and with the American Football League, where I think it was in 1933 they were coming out of the Depression, and league officials kind of outlawed having African American players play in their league, and that started mostly in the early 30s. It wasn't until 1946 when the LA Rams were trying to get another team in LA. They had to go through the Coliseum Commission, and at that time, the Coliseum Commission with the stadium there in Los Angeles came back to the Rams and said, you have to allow African American players back into our professional league. And at that point, they went ahead and said yes, and they offered Kenny Washington, who was a player for UCLA, to try out for the LA Rams. And shortly thereafter, the great Paul Brown, our legendary Paul Brown from Ohio, from Massillon, Ohio, he recruited Marion Motley and Bill Willis to try out for the Browns. And those were the two first players that then who played, kind of breaking this whole color barrier issue that had been going on for over a decade. So it was very significant. Marion Motley was just an outstanding running back, just bulldozed, just great. Bill Willis was a great defenseman. And because of the significance of that, of having broken through some of these barriers back in the late 60s or the late 40s, I really feel like those two players, I mean, they were great in just their own physicality and what they were as players, should be honored, and those numbers should be retired. Bill Willis wore number 99. Marion Motley, I would say 36, because he used to wear 76, but like I said, Lou Groza's number. So those two players. The next player that comes to mind that I would retire automatically would be Ozzie Newsome, number 82. Why his number is not retired? Probably because he went to our rival, the Baltimore Ravens, and that's not sit well with some of the folks when he went that direction. But of course, all things considered, I mean, Ozzie needs to have that number 82, retired. What a great tight end for the Browns. The next player on my list would be Clay Matthews. Now, Clay Matthews, number 57, played for the Browns for many years. He played for the Browns for 17 seasons, 19 total. He did go, I'm trying to think where he ended up. I think he ended up down in Atlanta for 2 years before he retired. He had 70 sacks, 16 interceptions. The game back in 90, I think it was in maybe 80, I want to say 1987 or 89 game when they were playing the Buffalo Bills, and it propelled them to go, the Browns to go play the Denver Broncos again. Buffalo with Jim Kelly they were just starting to become a really awesome team. That was right before Buffalo ended up going to all those Super Bowls in a row, and they were driving toward. And I was at this game. They were driving toward the end of the game, and Clay Matthews, go back and Google it, he gets the interception on Jim Kelly at the goal line to preserve the Browns' victory. One of the great moments in Browns history. Clay Matthews just was an outstanding player, just under the radar all the time. But his stats are off the charts. He has been considered for the Football Hall of Fame for many years, and continues to get sideswiped by that and not considered. So it's just ridiculous that he's not in the Football Hall of Fame yet. His number should be retired by the Cleveland Browns. All right, so that gives me what, 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. My final player would have to. Now this is tough because there's several other players, but I got to finish with Bernie Kosar, number 19, the greatest quarterback, my favorite player of just all time. Bernie's got to be there. Bernie is everything that a Cleveland Brown fan is all about. We love Bernie. Bernie is a local product of Ohio. Northeastern Ohio, and he wanted to play here. He had some tremendous years. Bernie and LeBron James kind of go hand in hand if you talk to anybody that is a diehard Cleveland fan. So Bernie's got to be up there. Now, some of the folks I left off, Paul Warfield, great receiver for the Browns. He was number 42, had some stellar seasons, receiving receptions. The only thing about Paul Warfield, he did go play in Miami for several years and then came back to the Browns to finish his career. Paul Warfield is a great guy, and I would consider retiring his number. Those years he played in Miami, it just sort of counters that. The other player that comes, two other players. Brian Sipe, again, great quarterback, under the radar guy, number 17. He actually still holds the record, I think, for most career yards by a quarterback in Browns history. Just a great competitor. Led that Cardiac Kid 1980 team. Red Right 88 is what he'll also be remembered for with Ozzie Newsome, but just a great Cleveland Brown. Finally, Joe Thomas. How can we not talk about Joe Thomas? Joe Thomas played 10 straight seasons, had over 10,363 straight snaps before he got injured. You just don't see that. You're never going to see that again in the NFL. He was solid as a rock, number 73. He's still on TV today. He's lost all that extra offensive lineman weight, but he all those years in the early 2000s and mid 2000s when the Browns just have been atrocious like they usually are, he was just always a stellar, tremendous offensive lineman. You could always just rely on him. Another name that comes to mind is in Phil we trust, Phil Dawson, the greatest kicker. I wish we could bring him back now, kind of like Lou Grosso. Lou Grosso was in his mid-40s, I think, late 40s when he finished kicking for the Brownies. I'd like to see Phil Dawson come back. But those are some extra players. But there you go. I'd like to know what your list is going to look like. I've been talking to some of you via social media. If you have a request or you want to reach us, again, at Facebook, at J Cleveland Pod, on our Facebook feed, love to hear from you and return the favor. But we are selling also our apparel, the Johnny Cleveland Podcast apparel, at Zazzle.com. If you type in Johnny Cleveland Podcast, you'll see all sorts of exciting apparel or coffee mugs that you can buy. My daughter, I know Mariah, has her Johnny Cleveland t-shirts. So we like to spread the love and hopefully go out and look at that. And if go buy a coffee mug. So see behind me here, I'm in kind of this is another alternative studio here. If you're watching on the we've got our new One Team One City Heartbeat poster with the great Sam Ratigliano. On my other shoulder here, we've got a great portrait of the Browns and the old wicked our evil counterpart, this Pittsburgh Steelers frame that we're putting up here too. So, all right, folks, I hope you have a great evening. It is a Wednesday right now. I'm looking at the game here. We're in the 6th inning. We're still tied at 1-1 for the Indians and the White Sox. It'll be interesting to see how the matchups end up. If the Indians end up playing the White Sox, they've really been playing them pretty well. I think they've got them measured up pretty good. The other possibility is playing Tampa Bay. And the Indians historically have not done so hot against Tampa Bay recently. So, playing the White Sox and kind of what we've already done to them and sort of shaken them a little bit, I think, with their mental state there as a team. I mean, the White Sox are the White Sox, right? I mean, they can have a great record, but they're the White Sox. So our Indians are off the playoffs. We'll talk more about that the next time. And until then, I hope everybody has a great evening. We'll be doing our Friday favorites. We'll be breaking down more of the Browns-Washington game. I'll give you our prediction of the game on Sunday. Look forward to that. Again, on Sunday, we'll have right after the game, we'll have our dog report post-game show where we might even have some special guests join us again, and we'll break down that game as well. So until then, I hope you all have a great evening, and we will talk to you then. And until then, remember to keep smiling. Take care. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I will talk to you soon, probably on Friday. Go Browns, go Indians, and keep smiling. Smile never leaves. It's just always there.